ਸੋ ਸਵਾਗਤ ਹੈ ਜੀ ਇੱਕ ਵਾਰ ਫਿਰ ਆਪ ਸਭ ਦਾ ਅੱਜ ਦੇ ਇਸ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਵਿੱਚ 14 ਮਈ ਨੂੰ ਜੋ ਪ੍ਰੋਵਿੰਸ਼ੀਅਲ ਚੋਣਾਂ ਹੋਣ ਜਾ ਰਹੇ ਨੇ ਉਸੇ ਸੰਬੰਧ ਵਿੱਚ ਅੱਜ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਅਸੀਂ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਜਾਵਾਂਗੇ ਰਾਈਡਿੰਗ ਮੇਪਲ ਰਿਜ ਪਿਟ ਮੈਡੋਜ਼ ਦੀ, ਜਿੱਥੇ ਕਿ NDP ਦੇ ਉਮੀਦਵਾਰ ਐਲਿਜ਼ਬeth ਰੋਜ਼ਨਾਓ ਸਾਡੇ ਨਾਲ ਸ਼ਾਮਿਲ ਹੋ ਰਹੇ ਨੇ। ਆਓ ਸਵਾਗਤ ਕਰਦੇ ਹਾਂ ਇਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਅੱਜ ਦੇ ਇਸ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ ਵਿੱਚ। ਵੈਲਕਮ ਟੂ ਦ ਪ੍ਰੋਗਰਾਮ।
Thank you so much, Harpreet.
Thank you. So a little bit about yourself, Elizabeth. What prompted you to jump into provincial politics?
Well, I just don't like the direction that our country has been taking, and I think it's time to change that direction. I'm not convinced that the Liberals have been doing a good job getting the fundamentals straight, and so I'd like to see I'd like to move toward the Canada that I grew up in and bring it back to that.
What has been your background and what is your community service?
Okay, so I'll go way back. My parents came to Canada in the late 1940s from war-torn Europe. And they came here because they wanted to start a new life in what they believed to be the best country in the world. And they thought this was the country that would offer them opportunities and their daughters opportunities. We came along much later, and it turned out we were two daughters. And at that time, Canada was a country full of opportunity and freedom. Now, I began my own family. My oldest daughter is 23 in Maple Ridge, where I settled to have my family. And that was followed by a son who's now 20 and a daughter who's 17. And as they became young adults, I saw a huge difference in what the opportunities were for them. And I had a lot of questions about why the world had changed so much from when I was a young person and they're young people now.
Right.
So that brought me into the political arena.
Okay. Let's talk a little bit about your riding. So now that you are campaigning and door knocking, what kind of issues are coming forward?
Transportation is a very large issue in our community because there's been a lot of development. It's a very fast-growing community, and I don't think the infrastructure, especially public transportation, has kept up with the needs. So we will need to be addressing that in a major way going forward. Another one is agriculture. There's a real struggle in our community. Some people want to speculate on agricultural land and make fast money from it, and other people are saying, no, we need to hold the line and think about food security for the future.
Right.
Yeah.
And again, as you said, transportation is a major issue. Do you feel that this present government, which was here, did not give much attention to this infrastructure development or transportation sectors?
Well, in our community, it certainly didn't seem as if we did get the Golden Ears Bridge. That is there's a high toll on that.
Right.
And you know, there have been some issues with that. There were some improvements, but the improvements really benefited car traffic a lot more than people who need to use public transportation or cycling.
Right.
And so because I'm interested in moving forward to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, I would have liked to see more development on the public transportation side so that people have alternatives from the car. I mean, we'll always have a segment of the population that can't afford a car, they're too young to own a car, perhaps they're blind or disabled in some way. So public transportation is a public service we have to keep strong. You know?
Right.
Yeah.
So apart from the party platform which is being brought forward by your party, what is your personal agenda which you are taking to the public? And as you mentioned about, you are very much concerned about environment also.
Yes.
So how prominent is this issue apart from the other issues which you are bringing forward?
It is one of many issues that are important. I would say that giving those opportunities to young people, myself, I'm a pharmacist, and I told you about my parents. They had to leave Europe. They were still very young. They had no opportunities there. They came to Canada and worked in a steel mill in Hamilton, Ontario, and my father had been getting educated to be an engineer before the war broke out. So it was very much my parents wanting to give us the opportunities that they never had. So I'm a pharmacist, my sister is a dentist, and we've done very well for ourselves. The young people in my community have to commute. Like my son who goes to Simon Fraser, he spends 3 hours on public transportation to get to university if he goes in one particular day. So if he has only a course that's 1 hour, it's a brutal amount of work for him to go. So opportunities for youth is very high for a lot of people. As a pharmacist, I see the needs in healthcare to some extent. I think there are some things that are addressed well and other things that we have to address much better. We need to look at our hospital, which wasn't rated very well recently by the CBC. We have to have a good, long, hard look at what's going well and what's not going well.
So there's a long list of what is to be done.
Yes.
And if you're elected in as MLA, so what would be your priorities?
I'm taking cues. I'm doing a lot of door knocking. I'm taking a lot of cues from what I hear on the doorstep. There's different priorities depending on the age of the people. And so for instance, you know, young people, they are struggling, some of them with student loans and with lacks of opportunity and lack of good jobs and having to move away to get good jobs. So we see families where father's off in Alberta to get some money and poor mother is struggling with children. Childcare is a big issue for that demographic. With older people, the problem is there are issues with services that have to do with health. So we don't seem to have the same health services that we would see, for instance, in Vancouver. There's a little bit of disparity. The further up the valley you go, the worse those services are, and then everybody's affected by transportation problems.
So Elizabeth, profiling your riding, I found out that there is a substantial amount of South Asian families also who live over there. So have you interacted with them, and what kind of issues are they bringing forward?
So I absolutely interact with them constantly. As a pharmacist, I interact with a wide variety of people. Our South Asian population, a certain number of them are heavily involved in agriculture, and so their issues would have to do with sort of temporary foreign workers, and we would love to have a Buy BC program. That's what we're working on. We love the agriculture sector, and we want it to be strong. And in order to keep it strong, we need to find markets for that. And so we ourselves as a government, we don't understand, for instance, why the food served in our universities and our hospitals is often sourced from elsewhere. And we want to buy British Columbia agricultural products to use in our country, in our province, to help farmers move forward and keep that. We understand it's hard to be a farmer, you know.
That's right.
Yeah.
Along with that, because the composition of all the ridings, we have that multicultural aspect can be seen over there. People from different communities. So if you are elected as an MLA, as I asked you about the priorities and you talked about some of those, so now that you are coming into the public life, your previous life in which you have been a pharmacist interacting with people in a different manner, so now what prompts you to do what you are doing? Because it's a full commitment. It's not an easy job. And people's expectations are also very high. And if one's expectation is not fulfilled, you know, the entire I would say, the brunt goes on the politician that he or she doesn't do anything. So how would you, if you are elected as an MLA, cope up with these issues?
Well, I mean, I've learned to cope with a lot of adversity in my life. I mean, certainly my parents were war survivors, and they've given me that spirit of survival. I'm fully aware that I won't be able to please all people, and that I will have enemies. And I actually believe that if you're serious about what you're doing, you will have enemies. It's almost a compliment to your strength when you have enemies. Serious people will get serious enemies over time. You know, and all politicians, you know, need a thick skin. And you know, I believe I'm ready. I mean, I really do believe I'm ready. Yes.
And towards the end, why should the public vote for you? And as you talked about the thick-skinned aspect to be adopted, but generally, many a times during times of elections, politicians are seen, but later on it's difficult to interact with them. So how do you assure the public why should they vote for you?
Well, that's a very good question. I mean, I have been putting myself out there as much as possible, and I'm, you know, in my first term, that will be my focus. It will be my community. I'm very, very lucky that the MLA in my community has been an NDP MLA for 8 years. He is now my campaign manager. I'm working closely with me. He knows the constituency very well, and he's quite happy to mentor me and introduce me to all of his connections, and back me up so that I can learn from his 8 years of experience. So that's a huge bonus, and I love people. I'm not shy. I was as a child, but I'm not shy now. And I've learned on the doorsteps, and I've been knocking on the doorsteps for 8 months now, that people don't want to hear somebody who says, on the one hand, I feel this, but on the other hand, I see this.
Direct answers are good.
Absolutely.
And you will be able to provide that kind of direct approach.
Absolutely.
Wonderful. Elizabeth, it was a pleasure having you. Best wishes.
you.
And best wishes for May the 14th.
And it was great to meet you too, Harpreet.
Thank you.
Thank you.
ਅੱਜ ਅਸੀਂ ਆਏ ਹੋਏ ਸਾਡੇ ਮਹਿਮਾਨ ਨਾਲ ਜਿਹੜੀ ਗੱਲਬਾਤ ਕੀਤੀ ਹੈਗੀ ਹੈ ਮੇਪਲ ਰਿਜ ਪਿਟ ਮੈਡੋਜ਼ ਤੋਂ ਐਲਿਜ਼ਬeth ਰੋਜ਼ਨਾਓ ਦਾ। ਇਹਨਾਂ ਦਾ ਕਹਿਣਾ ਹੈ ਕਿ ਮੈਂ ਐਜ਼ ਅ ਫਾਰਮਾਸਿਸਟ ਵੀ ਆਪਣੀ ਕਮਿਊਨਿਟੀ ਨੂੰ ਜਾਣਦੀ ਹਾਂ ਤੇ ਨਾਲ ਆਉਣ ਵਾਲੇ ਸਮੇਂ ਵਿੱਚ ਜੇਕਰ ਇਲੈਕਟ ਹੁੰਦੇ ਨੇ ਐਜ਼ ਐਨ MLA ਤਾਂ ਇਹ ਡਾਇਰੈਕਟਲੀ ਲੋਕਾਂ ਦੀ ਸਮੱਸਿਆ ਨੂੰ ਅੱਗੇ ਲੈ ਕੇ ਆਣਗੇ। ਆਉਣ ਵਾਲੀ ਚੋਣਾਂ ਦੇ ਸਮੇਂ ਦੇ ਵਿੱਚ ਸਾਡਾ ਇਹੀ ਮਕਸਦ ਹੋਏਗਾ ਕਿ ਤੁਹਾਨੂੰ ਸਾਰੇ ਉਮੀਦਵਾਰਾਂ ਨਾਲ ਉਹਨਾਂ ਦੀ ਮੁਲਾਕਾਤ ਕਰਵਾਈਏ ਤੇ ਫੈਸਲਾ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਕਰੋ ਕਿਸ ਨੂੰ ਤੁਸੀਂ ਵੋਟ ਪਾਣੀ ਹੈ।